I stood at the edge of my farm, fists clenched so tight my nails dug into my palms, watching in disbelief as Karen's shiny red SUV sank deeper and deeper into the mud like a ship caught in a whirlpool. She screeched into her phone, her high heels sinking alongside her dignity, blaming some idiot for her disaster. Some idiot being me, the owner of the land she'd been trespassing on for months. The engine roared, tires spun helplessly, and the sight was so pathetic and ridiculous that if I wasn't so furious, I might have laughed. But this wasn't just about a stuck car. It was a last straw after months of blatant disrespect. And today, Karen was about to learn a lesson she'd never forget. I took a deep breath of the crisp, rain-soaked air and let the anger settle into a quiet, dangerous calm. With each heavy step toward her squelching SUV, my mind replayed all the warnings I'd given, all the polite notes I'd left, all the patience I'd exhausted. Karen toned, her designer coat flapping wildly as she pointed an accusing, manicured finger at me. "You do something. My car's stuck because of your stupid field," she shrieked, voice cracking like the storm clouds gathering above us. Her high heels sank further into the mud, her dignity dissolving with every frantic movement. I crossed my arms, letting the silence stretch thick and uncomfortable. Then, with a small, tight smile, I said, "Oh, I'm going to do something all right." Her eyes flickered with confusion. She didn't realize that for once, this wasn't going to end her way. It all started a few months back, when I believed a simple neighborly talk could fix things. The first time I saw tire tracks slicing through my crops, I thought someone had gotten lost and turned around. Happens. People make mistakes. But then, it kept happening. Deep, fresh grooves ruining my carefully planted fields every few days. I set up an old trail cam, hoping to catch whoever was trespassing. Sure enough, there was Karen, my new neighbor, acting like my farm was her personal driveway. Her glossy SUV plowed across my young corn, leaving scars I couldn't ignore. I approached her one evening, waving my arms, voice raised. "Hey, you can't park here." She barely rolled down her window, sunglasses on despite the fading light, muttered, "Relax. It's just grass," and then rolled up the window without another glance. Just grass. Those words burned into my memory. To me, it wasn't just grass. It was my livelihood, my months of work, my sweat and hope. I left a polite note on her windshield. The next morning, it was crumpled in the date, flattened by her tire tracks. Ignored. Disrespected. The anger simmered in my chest, nearly boiling over, but I held it back, believing in second chances. Sometimes third. But her blatant disregard turned into outright disrespect. Weeks of notes, polite talks, even calling the local authorities. Neighborly dispute, they said. Work it out yourselves. Yeah, right. That only made her more brazen. One morning, fed up, I found the foulest manure I could find and spread it over her favorite parking spot. The smell was so bad it made my eyes water from a distance. When she arrived, windows down, gagging and shouting, "What is that?" I simply said, "Fertilizer." She sped off, avoiding the stink, but still trampling my crops. That's when I realized Karen wasn't ignorant. She was deliberately disrespectful. She needed a lesson. I stared at her for a long moment, then let a slow, deliberate whistle ring out across the land. From the barn, the rumble of my old John Deere tractor buzzed to life. Her eyes widened as genuine fear flickered behind her usual arrogance. I climbed into the tractor cab, muddy boots firm on the pedals, heart steady. I revved the engine loudly, the roar echoing through the field. Karen stumbled back, arms flailing, desperate. "Stop. What are you doing?" she yelled. I leaned out the window, calm and cold. "You shouldn't have parked on my land, Karen," I said softly. Then I lowered the steel claw toward her sinking SUV. Her scream pierced the air, raw and desperate. This time, there would be no more talking, no warnings, just the beginning of her lesson. The tractor's engine roared louder. The heavy tires churned up more mud as I circled her stranded car, inch by inch. Her face twisted in outrage and horror. I stopped just a few feet in front of her, calling down, "Promise me now, never park here again, and I'll pull your car out." Her eyes darted, her jaw clenched. She crossed her arms defiantly. "I don't have to promise anything," she spat. I smirked. Not good enough. Say it loud. She looked like she might explode, but the mud still swallowed her SUV inch by inch. Finally, she muttered, I promise I won't park here again, barely able to get the words out. I nodded slowly, then climbed down. I attached the tow chain, humming a cheerful tune as I prepared to pull her out. Her face was a mixture of rage and defeat. I gave her a mock salute, then started pulling. The vehicle fought against the mud, sinking deeper, but I kept steady. Little by little, it shifted. After a tense few minutes, her SUV finally broke free with a wet, disgusting slipe. Karen clapped her hands, pretending she'd achieved some victory. I unhooked the chain, dusted my hands, and walked away. Let her figure out how to clean the mud off her car. But just as she tried to start her SUV again, it coughed once, then died. Her face went from relief to horror in seconds. She tried again. Nothing. Her engine was dead. I stood on the porch, arms crossed, watching her panic. She pounded the steering wheel, screaming. I called out, You burned out your starter spinning your wheels. She whipped around, furious, blaming me. Her friend arrived, a big guy in a pickup, looking ready for a fight. They looked at her mud-caked SUV, shook their heads, and then, without warning, they backed up, tied a tow strap, and tried to pull her out again. The rope snapped with a loud pop, sending Mud and her into a frantic mess. She shrieked as mud splattered everywhere. Her friend cursed loudly, slamming his fists in frustration. Karen ran to him, yelling. He just shook his head and got into his truck. Forget it, he said. No tows coming today. I watched, amused, as she stood there, helpless, mud dripping from her coat, furious but defeated. That's when she finally looked at me, eyes blazing. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she asked, Can you help me? I leaned forward, feigning surprise. What was that, Karen? Her face colored with shame and anger. Please, she hissed, voice trembling, help me get my car out. I nodded slowly, a smile creeping across my face. Now we're talking, I said, walking back to my tractor. I hooked the chain again, and with a loud growl, I began the final pull. Inch by inch, I dragged her SUV towards solid ground. It took longer than it should have, deliberately, to prolong her humiliation. Finally, the SUV lurched free. Karen's eyes widened as she watched the precious car sink into the mud, helpless once more. I unhooked the chain, gave her a mock salute, and turned back toward my house. But the day wasn't done. Not yet. Would you like me to continue with the next chapter, or make any adjustments? Of course. Here's the second chapter, starting immediately from the ending of the previous one, diving straight into the action with simple, powerful language, suspense, and twists. The SUV lurched forward, finally freed from the mud's grip. But just as Karen thought she was safe, the engine coughed, sputtered, and then died altogether. Her face twisted in confusion and rage as she slammed her fists against the steering wheel. Nothing. The car was dead, completely useless. I watched her from the porch, arms crossed, a slow smile curling on my lips. The perfect ending to a long, frustrating day. I knew what was coming next. That look of panic, the frantic scrambling, the desperate hope that somehow she could fix this mess herself. But she was too late. Karen's hands flailed as she tried to turn the key again and again. The engine refused to roar back to life. Her eyes darted wildly, searching for solution, her breath coming faster. Her expensive manicure now smudged with mud, her perfect face contorted with anger and helplessness. Suddenly, she reached for her phone, probably to call someone, anyone, to get her out of this disaster. But I knew she wouldn't get far. I'd already set up a little surprise. I took a slow step toward her, pretending to be casual but feeling the rush of satisfaction. She saw me coming and froze, her eyes narrowing with suspicion. Need some help, Karen? I asked, voice calm but pointed. She clenched her jaw, eyes blazing. I don't need you. Just get me a mechanic. This is your fault. I chuckled softly. Really? My fault? You mean, like how you push your way into my land every chance you got? Or how you ignored every warning I gave? Her nostrils flared. You're just trying to embarrass me. I'll call the police. Go ahead, I interrupted, voice unwavering. But I've got the footage, and I've got witnesses. You're not getting out of this one. Karen. Her face paled. Her hands trembled as she stared at her dead engine, then back at me. You set me up. You're lying. I pulled out my phone, holding it up for her to see. The high-definition footage from my security camera played on the screen, her sneaking around, cutting through the fence, trying to fix her broken plan. She shrieked, her face twisting with fury and desperation. That's not me. Someone's framing me. I stepped closer, voice low and menacing. You're the only one who's been trespassing, Karen. You've been warned. This is a consequence. Her eyes darted wildly. Then suddenly, she lunged out of a car with a scream of pure rage. She stormed toward me, fists clenched, face red. Her heels sank into the muddy ground with every step. I'll ruin you, she spat. You think you've won? This isn't over. But I didn't flinch. I knew better. I had one last card to play, one she wouldn't see coming. See, I said quietly, you're not just stuck in the mud. You're stuck in your lies. And now, everyone's going to see the truth. Her scream echoed through the fields, but I wasn't afraid anymore, because I knew this wasn't just about a car. It was about her losing control, about her finally facing the reality that some boundaries can't be crossed without consequences. And I was just getting started. Would you like the story to continue with even more twists, or do you want me to make it more intense? Absolutely. Here's the third and final chapter, starting immediately from where the previous one left off, packed with action, suspense, powerful twists, and a mind-blowing ending. Karen's scream echoed across the muddy field as she lunged toward me, fists clenched and eyes wild with fury. But I didn't move back. Instead, I took a slow step forward, watching her tremble with rage and desperation. Suddenly, her phone buzzed loudly in her pocket. She hesitated, then snatched it out, glancing desperately at the screen. It was a call from a number she didn't recognize, unknown, but important enough to stop her for a second. Her eyes flickered with hope that maybe, just maybe, help was coming. But I knew better. I knew exactly what that call was about. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small, folded piece of paper. Carefully, I unfolded it and held it up so she could see. It was a court order, an official document I'd gotten that morning, granting me full rights to my land and putting an immediate stop to her trespassing. Her face drained of color as she stared at it, eyes wide and vacant. Her trembling hand dropped her phone. You see, I said softly, voice cold as ice, you thought you could push me around, break my fences, ruin my crops, and walk away. But this, I waved the paper. This is a law. And now, I've got the law on my side. Her lips trembled as she tried to speak, but no words came out. Her mind was racing, trying to find some way out of it, trying to deny what was happening. But deep down, she knew this was the end. I stepped closer, my voice rising just enough to be heard over the pounding rain that had started again, softening the mud beneath our feet. You see, Karen, I whispered, you've been playing with fire. You ignored every warning, every sign, every warning note. And now, you're caught, not just in the mud, but in the truth. She looked at me, her eyes filling with tears, tears of anger, shame, and defeat. She tried to speak, but all that came out was a strangled gasp. Then, without warning, I reached into my pocket again, this time pulling out a small device. It was a remote, one I'd secretly wired days ago, connected to the fence I'd built around my property. A flick of my thumb, and the fence suddenly shuddered, wires humming to life. There was a loud crack, like thunder, and every inch of the boundary line lit up with a bright, flashing sign, * no trespassing. Property protected by law. *. Her eyes widened in horror. She staggered back, trying to run, but the fence was already sealed, impossible to breach now. You see, I said, voice steady and unyielding, you thought you could cheat the system. You thought your entitlement made you invincible. But I've just made sure you're locked out, forever. She screamed again, this time in pure rage, pounding her fist against the fence as if trying to break through it with her sheer will. But it was no use. From behind me, I heard the distant sound of sirens, a sign that the police were finally on their way, summoned by the court order and the evidence I'd sent earlier that morning. Karen's face twisted into a mask of utter helplessness. Her shoulders sank as she realized she'd lost everything. Her pride, her control, her freedom to trespass on what was not hers. And then, something even more shocking happened. Her eyes flicked to the corner of the field, where I had secretly planted a camera, an old, hidden device I'd wired days ago. The footage played on my phone now, showing her sneaking onto my land late at night, trying to cut the fence, trying to sabotage her own car, desperate to escape her own mistakes. I pressed a button on my phone, and the footage broadcast directly to her, to the police, to anyone who cared to see. Her face froze in horror, realizing her own lies, her own deception, had been caught on camera from every angle. "Enjoy your new life, Karen," I said softly, "because this is just the beginning of what's coming." The police arrived, just as I'd planned. They stepped out of the cruiser, clear-headed and ready. Karen tried to protest, to scream, to deny everything. But the officer held up her own footage, and her words died in her throat. She was finally powerless. As they handcuffed her and led her away, I watched in silence. The storm had passed, and the sun was breaking through the clouds, bright, unforgiving, and just as relentless as justice. I turned back to my farm, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. The land was mine again, protected, respected, finally free from her shadow. And I knew, deep in my bones, that she'd never forget this day, because some lessons are learned the hardest way, and some boundaries are meant to be kept forever. This wasn't just about land. It was about standing up, about knowing your worth, about making sure the entitled never forget who owns what. And as I looked over the fields, I smiled, because I had won, not just today, but forever. And Karen? Well, she'd be telling her story, if she dared, about the day she met her match, and the day her world turned to mud.